Well, Jack was when we got really good at racetracks that were slick and the car didn't make a lot of grip, and that's really when the '99 car would shine. And I had a special way that I wanted the carburetor built because it allowed me to use my foot the way I wanted to use my foot, and Jack was a carburetor guy, so I had to work with Jack.
Jack was an everything guy, right?
I had to work with Jack to get it the way that he wanted it, and he loved that. He loved, we're going to do this, and then he would try to get the other drivers to do it. Nobody else wanted to because it's a feel thing. But just that camaraderie with a little thing like that, where I had this certain thing that I wanted, and he was going to work with me, and then he thought that was magic. Like, he got this special, and it did. He'll still talk about it today. He still talks about, I remember, he'll still talk about it. And so little things like that when you do something together.
Those were interesting situations.
Yeah, and how many times did we eat up into the local news?
Yes.
I mean, how many times a year are we run late?
That's a big deal for networks.
Oh, my gosh, that we run late, and somebody's watching, I want my news, why is this race on,
Yeah, there are serious conflicts, and they're not easily resolved often.
They are real, the TV window, no doubt. Welcome into Backstretch Banter on Sirius XM NASCAR Radio Channel 90. This is the home of RFK Racing each and every week. I'm Chris Childers. Today, Mike Massaro alongside with me as always. We like Mike as a part of this program. He is a staple at RFK, and he looked like he was having a blast emceeing all the Fan Day events this past Friday. We could talk about some of that in a little bit. Big announcement for the 60 car, which was pretty cool. But today's guest, what a legend when it comes to this team. Jeff Burton is with us. He drove that 99 for many years, I think nearly a decade with Roush Racing. Now it's RFK, but he remembers the days when it was just the R. Jeff Burton, it's a pleasure to have you back on the show. How are you, sir?
Great. It's good to be here. Always like coming over here.
It's great to have you. I mean, you are one of my favorite people to interview when I was just a young reporter back in the day, and then to get the opportunity to work with you on television not too long ago was also a dream come true to a certain extent. So to have you back in the studio to share a microphone with you, it's fun.
Yeah, it is fun. It's we had a great time working together at NBC, and of course you've covered the sport forever, know the sport really well, and what you guys do with this show is pretty cool because I think it gives the fans an inside look at what really goes on at a race team, the good, the bad, the ugly, and it's hard. I mean, running a race team is we as fans, I think generally the thought is, well, you just try to build as fast race cars as you can, but it's just so much more complicated than that. Getting the right group of people together, budgets matter. You have to run a business. It is a very, very complicated animal running a 3-car operation, and it's this show I think it's just a good opportunity to get on the inside of stuff and give the fans a little bit of inside look because it is very complicated.
Well, that's going to be our next promo for the show on Sirius XM right there, Jeff. We appreciate it. We love that. We take pride in the fact that we can kind of look at it from a different angle and go inside, and certainly I think it's kind of cool to have you back here on the show, and you were such a great part of building this team and winning over the years. I'm curious, as you said, kind of in passing when we started the show a second ago, you're like, man, it's always great to be back in this building. You're obviously heavily involved with racing. You got family that's heavily involved with racing. You're around the track. You're a broadcaster. But when you walk into this building in particular, when you walk into RFK, is there anything that immediately pops into your head? Is there a memory or a thought or a person or anything when you walk through the doors?
Culture. I mean, honestly, like I was perhaps the most influential, other than being a child with being raised by my parents, but second to that, Jack Roush and his impact on my life made me who I am, good or bad, because Jack, as an adult, he gave me the confidence to make decisions and the backing to say, you do what you think's right, and I got you. And when you mess up, you're going to have to own up to it. But I learned more in those 9 years working with Jack Roush that have shaped me professionally and personally as an adult, because there's only one way to do things in life, and that's to just get in there and do it. But you got to have somebody that lets you do that. And Jack he gave us so much freedom to do the things we wanted to do. Now, he would resist in a big way. And so what you had to learn to do was you had to learn to negotiate. You had to learn to have a good argument when you needed something or you wanted something. He just wasn't going to give it to you. You had to go earn it. You had to prove to him that you needed it. So that made you build this justification for whatever you were doing prior to doing it. And I've told this story many times, but in a nutshell, we go to Atlanta. We're second in points, brand new team. The '88 team with Dale Jarrett was first in points, and they were a brand new team also. We missed the damn race. Like, we go to Atlanta, we're still racing off of last year's points, so we don't have any points. So we missed the race. And I'm sitting in a race car that I set it up, was part of setting it up the way I wanted it. The body was hung on it the way I wanted it. All the parts and pieces were on it the way I wanted it to do. I drove it and drove it to failure. And Jack Roush walks up to me after all that, and he says, I am sorry for not providing you with what you needed to be successful on this day. This is on me. I will take it with the sponsors. It's on me. He gave me everything I wanted, but he, as the leader of the company, is like, I got you. And from that day forward, I'm like, all right. Because you find out who people are in bad times, not in good. And and I was pretty convinced that I was going to lose my job, and rightfully, should have potentially lost my job. But that right there, then from that moment on, man, it was game on. And because he let us do what we wanted to do, he made us justify it. He had our back. Look, he'd be hard on us too. Like, he wasn't easy to work for. And I think that's part of why I grew so much in that amount of time. I had to.
You knew at that moment that he had your back, no matter what.
For sure.
So that's an example of maybe a low point. But give me an idea of what it was like in the good times when things really started to click for you and Jack.
Well, Jack was when we got really good at racetracks that were slick, and the car didn't make a lot of grip, and that's really when the '99 car would shine. And I had a special way that I wanted the carburetor built, because it allowed me to use my foot the way I wanted to use my foot. And Jack was a carburetor guy. So I had to work with Jack.
Jack was an everything guy, right?
I had to work with Jack to get it the way that he wanted it. And he loved that. He loved, we're going to do this. And then he would try to get the other drivers to do it. Nobody else wanted to, because it's a feel thing. But just that camaraderie with a little thing like that, where I had this certain thing that I wanted, and he was going to work with me, and then he thought that was magic. Like, he got this special, and it did. He'll still talk about it today. He still talks about, I remember, he'll still talk about it. And so little things like that, when you do something together, right? And because, look, it's I'd like to tell you that being part of a sport team, and everybody's always rallying together, and everybody's always on the same idea playing, that's far from the truth. Because the way you get better in everything is by pushing everything. And the only way you can do that is you have to have antagonists. You have to have people that will question everything. You have to have people that are willing to get out on an edge, and somebody's got to pull them back. So because of that attitude, there's always, I don't know if conflict's the right word, but there's always people going at each other, because you're trying to move the ball. You're trying to make things better. And somebody's got to have an idea. And if you do, that means you're going to change from doing something the way you're doing it. So, working in a sports team is can be very, very demanding. And it was like that here. I mean, this was a tough place to work, but it was extremely rewarding.
And I know Jack is still heavily involved with the team and at the racetrack. But I'm curious, like, do guys like Jack in his heyday, and you mentioned the relationship, and I mean, this is pro sports, and yet there's that real trust that you have to have and that bond, and almost like, two guys that are, grease monkeys working on a car, but at the end of the day, this is big time professional sports. Does that still exist? Like, does Harrison, your son, does he have that kind of relationship within his team? Does that still exist in this modern version of NASCAR, Jeff?
No question. No question. It's still competition. And it's, the way you win has evolved and the way you prepare has evolved. But at the end of the day, it's still sports. And it's still, it's much more of an engineering exercise today. But you have to look at in the eye of the guy that you're working with. And you're going to battle with them. There's an old saying, you don't take your friends with you you take your friends with you to the racetrack. You don't meet them there. And, that's really has to be that way, is that you're going to battle. And I would say this, never in the history of the sport has the competition been this close. There's never, ever, ever has it been this close. When you sit and you watch a race, and you have access to timing and scoring, you see the guy that's running fifth. He, at a mile-and-a-half racetrack, the guy running fifth is about a tenth of a second faster than the guy running 30th. I mean, think about that. We've never had that before. And so now everything matters more. So the belief in team, the belief in the guy on the pit box, he's going to make the right call, the camaraderie, now it matters even more. And when you start to see that splinter and you start to see a lack of trust and a lack of faith, it shows up on the racetrack. It shows up in speed. And look, Jimmy Johnson and Chad Canals are a good example of that. They would go at each other. I mean, they would go at each other. Jimmy pushed. He pushed hard, and Chad pushed hard. Chad pushed his driver as much as anyone's ever been pushed in my eyes, but they knew they were good for each other, and they won a lot of races doing it. And a lot of people, it sounded antagonistic, it sounded confrontational from time to time, but they trusted each other, and they pushed each other to be better, and that's just what you have to be able to do.
Yeah, we heard about the milk and cookies meeting. So this is legend, but I think it's true. It's based in truth. But at the same time, there's got to be a mutual respect, I would think, right, between crew chief and driver?
For sure.
For sure. So you mentioned how close the competition is. Can you imagine a time, because I'm thinking about all the telemetry that these drivers are using these days. They'll sit in their car in between practice sessions, in between practice and qualifying, and they'll look at a tablet in their car, and they can see how their car is mirrored against some of the faster cars and all that technology that drivers have now at their disposal. Can you imagine having that back in your day?
So we had it, but we only had it at test sessions. So at a test session, we would have telemetry on the car, and we could compare, how a driver was driving a car versus another one. But that wasn't live data. That was data that you would make a run, and then you could go sit down and have pull it back up and then, Mark and I, for example, or Matt and I, we would sit down at a test and we would compare notes. Part of me is jealous of the data they have, and the other part of me is so glad that I didn't have that. And here's why. So data is really important, but what data doesn't do, it can't measure feel. So if everybody could feel and did feel the same thing in a race car, then every car would go exactly the same speed, and they don't. And the reason that a Chris Buescher might be better at a particular racetrack than a Brad Keselowski or vice versa is because of the feel. So you don't drive a race car with vision alone. You drive it with what you see and what you feel. And you don't see a loss of grip or a gain of grip. You feel that. And the best feel it before it happens. And so you can't measure that. And so the reason I'm glad I didn't have that is because it allowed me to drive the way that I wanted to drive, and then we would work on making my race car the way that I needed to be. And I think what we see today is we see a lot of engineers and crew chiefs say, hey, this guy drives this car this way, and he goes this speed, so we're going to put all that stuff in the car, and you got to find a way to make it go that speed. Driving a race car is an art. And trying to take the art out of driving a race car, I get it from an engineering principle why you would want to do that. Because if RFK can make all three of their race car drivers drive exactly the same way, how much easier is it going to be to set our race cars up? But that's not life. In life, we're all different. We all feel different things. We all process things differently. So marrying that art to engineering is the magic in today's world. How do you do that? And how do you make a driver who is uncomfortable feeling that his race car has that another driver's like, that feels great. So Mark and I drove pretty decently the same in regard to the speed we could make. Mark was a little quicker than me. Mark liked his car to be a little bit looser than I liked mine, but we could make the adjustment in the car, and I could be like, all right, we ought to be faster compared to Mark or vice versa. But we knew we knew there were differences, and we celebrated those differences. We didn't try to fix them. We tried to understand how to maximize his opportunities and maximize my opportunities. But in today's world, it's you're seeing less and less of that. But at the end of the day, as long as the drivers go around the racetrack and there's not enough grip to run wide open, driving a race car is always going to be an art.
I love that. I love that analogy.
It's interesting that he says that, and he talks about the feel and how some drivers have, maybe a different feel for some tracks and cars on different tracks as opposed to others. And, I was watching a bunch of racing over the weekend, the Coke race, and obviously it's a huge holiday weekend for racing. So F1 had a race in IndyCar, and there was an IndyCar driver that's really, really good on the road races that finally won on an oval, which was a huge deal. And as Jeff was talking about that, I was thinking, wow, okay, that kind of puts it in a different perspective of how that guy had to change completely how he feels in a race car to be able to master that. How many guys can do that? How many guys, if given the time, can work out all the different tracks and short tracks, the speedways, the road tracks? Like, is it a unique group, in your opinion, that can do that, or could everybody possibly do it if given time?
Well, there's certainly outliers, right? there's certainly people that are naturally gifted that have that outlier talent that is really hard to deal with.
It's a short list.
It's a very short list.
That's why I think it's interesting, right?
But the beauty is that the diversity in racetracks provides opportunity for everyone that has a certain amount of skill, right? Mm-hmm. You can't take a driver and put them in Cup that's not talented and think they're going to be successful. Everyone in Cup is exceptionally talented, and if you don't think so, watch our Cup drivers go run in every other series that they run in, and what do? They run in the front. I mean, in everything. Mm-hmm. And I think some of that is because of the diversity of racetracks that you have to learn how to be a different kind of race car driver, different kind of racetracks, and so how many can do a great job at all those racetracks? Excuse me. It's a small number. It's a small number. Look, when you start looking at how many race car drivers have won 10 races in NASCAR, I don't have the number in front of me, but you'll be shocked how small it is.
Yeah.
And if you look at how many have won 20, it's
even less.
I mean, to win 20 races, you have to win on a variety of different racetracks.
Yeah.
And There's not a whole lot of people that can consistently do that. It's very
and
it's
Mike,
very difficult.
Chris Buescher has proven he can win short tracks, he can win on the street, and he can win on the super speedway. So I think Chris might
he's
be
on
in
that
that
short
category.
list, right?
Yeah,
versatile
he's on that short
drivers
list of guys that can kind of do
For
it in
sure.
all
for sure.
different ways and forms. Really cool conversation so far with Jeff Burton. Let's take a break. We'll come back. We'll revisit the Coke 600 from this past weekend. He knows a thing or two about it. He might have won it a couple of times. So we'll talk to him about that when we come back. Chris Childers and Mike Massaro here on Backstretch Banter with RFK. We're back here on Backstretch Banter with RFK Racing, Sirius XM NASCAR Radio Channel 90. Chris and Mike, and we are hanging out with Jeff Burton today on the program, the legendary driver of the number 99 car for Roush Racing, and a guy who is still heavily involved in racing. He's a broadcaster for NBC. He's got a race series of his own that is active in the Carolinas and in Virginia, and we'll talk about that in just a little bit, which is really cool for those that don't know about it. But Jeff, we just had the Coke 600, and that's something you know a thing or two about. We had a pretty good showing for our team. Brad Keselowski breaking in the top 5. We had Ryan Preece once again sneaking in the top 10, and Chris mixed results throughout the day. But overall, not a bad day at all for RFK. It's a long race. It's a grueling race. You watched it. You've been through it. What'd you think of this past one?
Yeah, I saw Brad's comments after the race. He said, "Hard to say this, hard to believe I'm saying this, but I wish it was 700 miles." Right, and that's how that race goes, right? You so many times, you watch those races, and like William Byron, he's gonna win it. Like he's got the best car, and then the track starts changing, and you could see it start happening where, you could see, he just didn't have the maneuverability that he had earlier in the race, and at the end of one of those stages, he started having trouble putting the guys a lap down, guys that were lap down past him, and got their lap back, and you're like, that's not heading in the right direction, and sure enough, it just kind of got away from them, and then the one car got so fast. I mean, it was blistering fast. When I watch a race, I watch it differently than most people. I have the TV on, but I also have timing and scoring. I have a multi screen experience happening.
It's like race control in Jeff's house.
I love that.
I got scanners. I got timing and scoring. I got so much stuff going on, and I could see Ross was fast. And but when Tyler Reddick just about crashed. Well, he did crash on the back straightaway. That was the difference because William had to check up big time, lost a ton of time on that one lap, and the one car the whole time was coming, but he needed an event. He needed something to happen, and he got it. And then when he did such a great job. We hear so much about how hard it is to pass, and it is hard to pass because everybody's going the same damn speed. But when he got to William, he got by him pretty quickly. He got there, and then it took him a little while. Then William caught some lap traffic, and he got himself in a narrow bad spot. And as soon as that happened, Ross did a great job of taking advantage of it. So it was a fun race. It was a good race. The 600's turned into one of the best races every year. And we saw it once again this weekend.
It's because the track goes through so much change from day to night. It gets a lot cooler. I'm curious, though. So you mentioned Brad's comments. Brad said he wished it was 700 miles. That's because the last 100 miles were probably his best.
Yes.
He was coming to the front as well, and if he had another 100 miles, who knows what might have happened with the 6 car. I wonder, though, when you see the comers and goers, is it as much it is the car over those last 100 miles, or is it the driver that can stay in the seat the best?
I think in today's world, it's a car. I don't know if there's a driver that's becoming tired. Now, look, there's a situation where you could be sick or be injured or something, and that's different. But with all things being normal, a driver in 2025 shouldn't be falling out of the seat.
Okay.
And if he is, then he better be getting his ass in shape pretty quick, because if not, he's going to need a job. It's just as a professional race car driver in today's world, it is fully understood that you're going to have yourself in physical condition. So I don't think it's the driver. I think it's just ultra competitive. It's so close on time, and then as the track starts changing, it's just super hard to keep up with it. And then conditions change in regard to where you are on the racetrack compared to the cars you're racing with. I know that sounds odd, but you could take the 10th place car in many races, and if you have a great pit stop or if you have a great restart, and next thing you know you're running 5th, now that's a 5th place car. And it's just that competitive. So track position's ultra important, and I just think it's finding a way to get track position, keep it, and then keeping up with the speed of the car.
It's kind of an interesting little side note is the conditioning, right? You're 600 miles. It's a long day. You're starting in the day. You're ending at night. But, we think about it all the time with athletes. You think of soccer or whatever sport where people are running constantly. But when you're a race car driver, people might not be thinking about the physical conditioning that it takes, but to get in the car and to do what you're doing at that speed and that temperature and all that at 600 miles, give us an idea of how physically fit somebody needs to be and what kind of conditioning it takes for somebody to actually make it through that race, their body.
Yeah, so the best way I could describe it is in the summer, go in your garage, shut the doors, let it get 130, 125, 130, 135 degrees, and get on a bike and ride it for 4 hours.
Ugh.
I mean,
I want to pass out just thinking about it, Chris.
So you've got to be in incredible condition.
I'm not exaggerating
Incredible
that.
condition.
I mean, that's how it is. I mean, it's nothing for it to be 110 degrees. I mean, that's nothing. That's a good day. I mean, hell, 100, yeah, that's great. I mean, that's so when you start thinking about the heat and then the stress, and you're not just riding a bike, like you're sitting in something that'll hurt you. And you have your sponsors, your team, your everything that's built to win, and you're sitting in that car and you're supposed to go win with it. And the stress involved in that, and it's a lot more grueling than people would think, and it just doesn't look like it, right? It just looks like cars going in a circle, but it's far from that.
I mean, if you've seen a driver get out of the race car, and I know you have, Jeff, but folks out there may not have, but we've seen plenty of drivers get out of the racetrack completely drenched in sweat after a summertime race. Things are a little bit different in this day and age, Jeff, as you well know, the cool suits and what have you. The drivers are obviously, as you mentioned, in tip-top shape. But that hasn't always been the case. If you go back to the 90s and what have you, before some of the technological innovations to keep drivers cool, what was that like? Middle of July, August, and July in Daytona, who knows, during the day. I mean, what was that like?
I mean, it was certainly hot. I mean, the worst one was Ricky that I was ever in.
Martinsville?
That race Ricky Rudd won.
Right.
Matter of fact, I took the lead and I couldn't keep it. My brain was cooked. And
Really?
Ned Jarrett actually on the broadcast, Ned Jarrett says, I think Jeff's gotten overheated and he can't, and he was right. Like I hate to say this, but it was one of those days, and it popped in my head during the race you hear about summer practice sessions and someone dies.
Football.
Yes,
right? Football season,
that
usually
popped
August.
in my head during the race. I'm like, someone's going to die. And when the race was over, my father-in-law, who was a doctor, I get out of the car and he grabs me and he grabs Mark Martin and took us into. Then there was a room where there were showers, and he just puts us in there. Turns the showers on. We're full uniform, and there's like 5 or 6 drivers came in there and just lay in the floor of the shower. It was so hot, and it was to the point where it honestly was dangerous. It was honestly dangerous.
And that was. Do you remember what year that was? That was Martinsville, right?
Yeah, it's definitely Martinsville. Late 90s, 99, 2000, right in there.
Yeah, I remember Ricky Rudd won the race,
Ricky
correct?
Rudd won the
and
race,
got
yep.
out and immediately sat down,
laid down
beside his race car.
In Victory Lane.
That was
Victory
Lane.
In Victory Lane, yeah, with the oxygen mask on.
Yeah, I remember the scene.
At that point, that's not good. That's not good. And luckily, we have increased the technology, but still, I mean, I remember Bubba a couple of years ago and looking at him on TV, and things didn't go too well because of the heat. So it's summer. A lot of races are in really hot part of the country, and luckily though we have those cool suits now because I cannot imagine like Nashville's coming up, and it's a night race, which is awesome. But there's been some day race versions of Nashville that
Oh yeah.
seem inhumane for somebody to get in a race car and have to go around for that many miles. We're talking to the great Jeff Burton. We just saw the debut of Amazon Prime. You're a broadcaster. Streaming is kind of, it's here, it's happening. We got to get used to it as race fans because that's how we're watching a lot of sports now: football, baseball, basketball, etc. What did you think of Amazon Prime's debut?
Yeah, it was really good. I fully expected it to. I know the producer, the director, the pit road producer very, very well. They have a great front row in the production side. And then, look, I think Steve Letart's is as good as he comes in regard to, his role and Junior's excitement. And, there was no question in my mind there would be a good broadcast. I've worked with Steve for 12 years now. I worked with Dale Jr. in the booth, worked with all the people on the production side of that, and no surprise on my side that there would be a good show. I think that's an extremely experienced group. And then Corey, I thought Corey and Danielle and Carl, they did a great job of pre-race, post-race. It was very, very, very well done.
The feedback that I've seen on the broadcast was that they really liked the post-race show, that it was that it gave a little bit more life to the race. I believe it was an hour-long show. Do you think the sport needs stuff like that?
Well,
it seems like it.
Well,
for
if you
sure.
think about what NBC did last year, that's what we started doing.
Mm-hmm.
We started having super long post-race shows. Our pre-race shows became shorter, but our post-race shows became much longer. Mm-hmm. And fans have said that they like it. And so we leaned into that and started doing a lot of that. And then Amazon did that this weekend, and yeah, I think it's proven that the fans liked it. I mean, look, some fans, some fans can't get enough, right? It's just, and some want a long pre-race, a long post-race. The truth of the matter is, what we've seen with the current fan is that they really like the post-race show the most.
Yeah, I think the fans want to hear from their driver, no matter who it is. They want to hear how that driver assessed the day, and when networks have to get off the air within 10 minutes of the checkered flag, that takes away from the fans, hearing from their favorite driver who, may not have finished in the top three, may have finished 7th or 8th, but still had an interesting day, and they want to hear from them.
Yeah, it does. And I think that with what we did with NBC is if we were on USA and we could keep it on longer, but if not, we would say, hey, go here. We're going to continue the coverage, right? And the streaming services, the opportunity for websites, streaming services gives us the latitude to, even if we got to go off air, are still going, go here. This is where we're going to be. And so that's the advantage in modern technology, is being able to, you don't have to necessarily end your broadcast when the TV window expires. And TV windows are real.
They are
real. And
streaming windows, however, are elongated.
That's correct. That's a different ball game. And so,
which is a sports fan's benefit, when you have that with Peacock and all those different services.
It's funny. I have to
Prime,
I have to remind fans from time to time. They get upset at the short TV window. I have to remind them that there's something that went off for us to come on.
It's true.
So whoever the fan was of whatever they were watching before we came on, their TV window ended. we have to share. We have to share. Yeah. And there's a time that we have, and there's a time that other people have their time.
Oh, believe me, I remember my days with ESPN where we would be on during football season, and a college football game, God forbid, would go into overtime before our race. Oh my gosh, what would you do? You had to stay with the game, obviously, because people were invested in that and they wanted to see the end of that. But at the same time, the green flag was about to fly. So it was those were interesting situations.
Yeah, and how many times did we eat up into the local news?
Yes.
I mean, how many times
yeah.
a year we
And
run late?
that's a big deal for networks.
Oh my gosh, that we
those
run
ads
late,
are
and somebody's
their
watching.
lifeblood. Yeah.
I want my news.
Yeah.
Why is this race on?
Yeah, there are serious conflicts, and they're not easily resolved often.
They are real. The TV window, no doubt. Let's take a break. We got more with Jeff Burton when we come back. It is Backstretch Banter with RFK Racing on Sirius XM. We're back here. It's Backstretch Banter with RFK Racing on Sirius XM NASCAR Channel 90. Jeff Burton is our guest today on the program. We've been having some fun with Jeff, and I know Mike's going to step away in a few minutes because we have a special
Sad about
surprise.
that. I'm very sad about that, by the way.
Well,
But
they're giving
you're right.
you the hook, but apparently there's like a family thing.
Yeah, I know what the surprise is, and,
Yes.
and I agree with it. Yeah, I'm ready to step away to give up my seat for that person.
It's very exciting, and we'll do that in just a little bit. But a few more minutes with Mike. Let's take advantage of it. Jeff, you're so heavily involved with racing. It's a family business. Obviously, we watch Harrison racing every weekend. You also are in the ownership side. You've got the car series going on right now, which I think is a lot of fun. Give us an idea of what racing means to you from that perspective and why you've invested this time and your money and all that with some pretty heavy hitters, including Dale Jr., to really get into the late model world.
Well, I a couple reasons, but obviously, when Junior approached me about it, I was immediately intrigued, and then I'm like, hey, let's, I brought Kevin's name up because I worked with Kevin a lot, and then he brought Justin Marks up, and I'm like, what a fun group, what I like about that group is that we all see the world differently. We all see. We look at every situation from a different standpoint, and then Kelly Earnhardt, she's the one that's got to sort through all the madness. But it's just fun. It's great racing. It's grassroots racing. It's in my opinion, for Cup racing to be as strong as it needs to be and can be, then we need good grassroots racing as well. It's all connected, and it's fun to be part of. And then obviously the thing I do with NBC, that takes a tremendous amount of time. And then the Drivers Council, that's a really busy thing that we've got going on now. We're in our third year, and it's so important for the drivers to have a voice and to have a seat at the table in the areas that drivers deserve a seat at the table, right? There's some perspective that the drivers have that's really important. So, let's just say I have enough going on. I'm busy enough in my life. Everybody says, "What do you do when you're retired?" I'm like, "Retire. I work more now than I ever did." But it's all in racing, and it's this is my passion. It's always been my passion. It is the family business, but it's really a business born out of passion, and it's just the people in this sport are special. They're just special people, and it's a privilege and an honor to still be around and still be part of it.
Yeah, I concur. People are the biggest and best part of the sport, no question about it. So we mentioned your professional endeavors, but your personal endeavors, I've always been intrigued with the fact that you are now a driver's father. You were in the broadcast booth when Harrison won a Cup race at Daytona last year. I want to go back to that because I think this is the first time I've been able to speak with you publicly about it. What was that like? I remember sitting at home watching it, just being thrilled for you.
I think for me, as important as racing is in our lives, Jack, I said Jack helped shape me, and that was through motorsports. But this sport has a way of forging you good and bad. And watching my son go through a difficult time in his life at 23 years old and remaining a good person and not pointing the finger and those guys over there, they did this to me, da-da-da-da-da, none of that, even behind closed doors, and then just keep going to work. And he didn't just win that one race. They were running so much better. Like they had become, to be honest with you, after he got fired, and he said it multiple times, if he was running the way that they ran before he got fired, he wouldn't have gotten fired. But it took something like that to happen for him to just kind of let go and quit trying to be something that he wasn't. But he learned that at 23. And so watching him navigate through that and then win at Daytona was, from a father's standpoint, was as good as it gets, because it wasn't just success on the racetrack. It was kind of the world was seeing the person that we know he is. And that's as gratifying as it gets. And, I'm proud of both of my kids because they're good people. And it was kind of out there for everyone to see and win, and tough moment because we all go through them. It just was all that came crashing down at the same time.
Massive experience, and he's only 24 years old. There's huge upside to that.
There is, and this year, he's taken AM Racing, who was, I think they finished 32nd or 33rd in Xfinity points last year, and he's 11th in points today after a horrendous weekend, where they finally got running okay and ended up getting a wreck late in the race. So, he's showing people that he has the talent and the skill to do it. The question is, will he get that chance again, right, to get back in the Cup level? You don't know that. You just don't know. There's no promises in this world.
Well, all I can say is there was a time when people gave up or were about to give up on Joey Logano, and things turned out pretty good for him.
Yeah. Well, he is.
That they did.
Yeah, he's 24 years old.
I mean, not to put any pressure or a direct comparison, but there is precedent.
Dale Jarrett said it best. Dale called him and he said, "Look, man, I this happened to me." Dale Jarrett was in Cup. Mark Martin called him. He's, hey man, I was in Cup, got out of Cup, got back. Dale Jarrett came back. They both reached out to him, and so it's don't get me wrong, it's going to be hard, but it's not impossible.
Not impossible at all. Mike, we'll say goodbye to you. Jeff, you hang around. We got somebody you've known for quite a while that's going to stop by next right here on Backstretch Banter. We're back here on Backstretch Banter on Sirius XM NASCAR Radio with RFK Racing. Jeff Burton has been our guest today, and we're going to welcome in a little different co-host right now. Mike Massaro has stepped away because Alexis Stoddard is now with us, and she's got a fancy role at RFK. She's a hospitality account coordinator. But Alexis, you've known this guy for a little while, haven't you? Go ahead and tell us the background you have with Jeff Burton, and welcome to Backstretch Banter.
Thank you. Yes, my dad was Jeff's crew chief back in the 90s in the Exide days, and then went on to be a crew chief at other teams and eventually owned his own Cup Series team. So I'm definitely not new to the world of racing or any of the people.
So what was it, Jeff? I mean, I'm sure it's probably cool for you. You see your son in racing. We just talked about your crew chief's daughter is now, involved with a race team. Is it cool for you to kind of see Alexis, you come here in this role? I think she's been with Roush now for 6 months or so.
So we actually ran into each other at the Masters like maybe 3 or 4 years ago. So she walked up and introduced herself to me, and I'm like, yeah. And then Kevin told me several months ago, actually probably right when you started, that you were coming here, and it's awesome. Like that's what that's what this sport is. I actually saw Frank, your mom and your dad this weekend this week, and I told them both that in the 3 or 4 minute conversation we had at Augusta, I said that girl's got her stuff together. She's going to be successful. And then when Kevin told me that she, you can tell when a young person walks up to you and has confidence, and you can tell. And then Kevin told me that you were working here, so that's awesome. It's good. That's what life's about, to see what the next group's going to do.
So, Alexis, what was it like for you being around Jeff when you were a kid? I mean, you're around the racing world in a time when, obviously Roush Racing was at the pinnacle and you're able to hang out and kind of see things from a different angle. So, I mean, what, like, as a child, tell Jeff Burton what he meant to you as a kid. Like, what was he bigger than life? Was he just the guy that Dad worked with? Like, how did that work?
Yeah, so I was really young when my dad, crew chief for Jeff, but definitely has plenty of stories. I was always, and still am, really close to my dad. I'd call him my best friend, and so he definitely has a ton of stories. I would say over and over again, he's constantly telling me that his Coke 600 wins and leading every lap at Loudon was some of his favorites. But the Southern 500 rain out win is one of my favorites. But definitely having a dad and even a mom who was in racing, it was a very crazy lifestyle, lots of traveling and lots of being on the go and kind of pivoting and not always having your parents at everything, and knowing that was the lifestyle they live was super cool. I would say my dad did a really good job at balancing being a crew chief and having a lot on his shoulders and being a dad at the same time, and taught me a lot about work ethic and balancing your family and a crazy work life and never giving up on your dreams. He obviously came from a very small town in New England and didn't have a lot going for him, so he made his path himself, and I think that's really cool and has always really inspired me to go and set my goals high. So I think that was cool inspiration as a dad and having that life growing up.
The other family connection is she said that her mom Heidi was in the sport. She actually was Ward's public relation person for several years. So she worked with Ward. So they got all the Burtons they could stand for a while. And she, both Heidi and Frank, for sure, the work ethic was really high. I met Frank first. He was working for Stub McFadden in the Northeast at the Busch North Series. And I watched him, what he was doing, and I tried for a long time to get Frank to come down south to come work on a team. And finally, he came he was a tire changer. He was a mechanic and a tire changer when we very first started the 99 car. He was one of the first hires when we started the 99 car. I pushed hard to get him, and he finally got in a situation where he's like, okay, that looks like a good opportunity. And working with Buddy Parrott, and those first couple of years, we had a ton of talent on that team, and a lot of young talent that ultimately went on to win a lot of races at a lot of different places and have all kinds of success. We put a really good team together for a long time. Frank was one of the very first hires.
And anyone that knows him knows that he's a very hard guy to convince to do anything that he doesn't want to do. So Jeff's not lying when it took him years to get him to come, and it takes him lots of time to get convinced of anything these days.
And one of the smart, I always said, that a team would be smart just to hire Frank to be a strategist. Just like you could hire Frank Stoddard, just say, all right, figure out when the best time for us to pit is, and because he is one of the very best strategists in the business. Period. End of story.
Does Dad watch the races now? Like, does he come to RFK races ever and give his 2 cents? And you're like, Dad, just
I have not talked him into coming to a Cup race recently. I also date an engineer in the Cup series, and so we get plenty of family conversations at the dinner table about what was the strategy call and why'd you do that, and why didn't someone else do this, and now obviously racing's changed a lot, so I'm sure if you put him on a box he would need some adjusting time, but I'm sure he's still got all of his wits about him.
We have a couple minutes left. Alexis Stoddard is with us from RFK, Hospitality Account Coordinator, and Jeff Burton. And Alexis's dad, Frank, was Jeff's crew chief. And, all I can think about is family, the family dynamic. Jeff's family, Frank's family, everybody else. It's such a grueling sport. You're traveling all the time. I mean, how would the two of you describe it? Alexis, you can certainly chime in from, being the little kid who's now working for a team. But Alexis, like, what is that? I got to imagine the racing family world is a little bit different than most of our families.
Yeah, I would say it's a really cool environment. I always loved growing up like that. Obviously, the MRO community was really big for kids in racing, and I'm still really close with a lot of kids that grew up in NASCAR. The Zipadelli family would be a great example. Grew up with his kids, and I would consider them like family to me. I would say traveling every weekend and learning to balance your personal goals as a kid, like going to prom or going to a softball game or hanging out with your friends on the weekend is definitely hard when your parents are like, we got to go on the road and do this and balance your work life as well. But I think overall it gave me so much perspective on life. Obviously, now at 22, I've been to almost every state in the country and seen so much of the world. And culturally, that really prepared me for life. And being around people who tirelessly work all day, 90 hours a week like crazy people, I think they're some of the hardest working, best people. And I think the community that NASCAR has is unparalleled to any other.
Jeff, it's interesting, isn't it? How much of I think every sport to some respect, but this one's a little different from the family dynamic.
It is. It's it's what's difficult about it is it's on top of it being a sport, it's also a business, right? And it's a grueling way to make a living when you're judged by tenths of a second and you're judged by thousandths of a second for a pit crew member, or you're judged by the wrong or the right call or the speed of the car. It is intense and as gratifying as it is. It's also a very, very difficult way to make a living because you're under a constant microscope. And that's just the way it is. It's just, and it has a way of wearing you down. It has a way of it can be grueling. And there's times you have to, now at 58, I've learned, that it's just perpetual. It just never stops. I used to think there was an off season and a season, and it's really not. It's just perpetual. It goes all the time. And I wish I'd have had that perspective because my first 2 years, I get about halfway through the year, I was exhausted. I was done. Yeah. And then I learned, but it is good people, but it's super competitive, and it is a very, very, very difficult way to make a living because you're always under a microscope in every position in the company, in every race team. Everybody is constantly being judged because you're trying to be the best, and when you're trying to be the best, that means that all the employees, everybody, driver, crew chief, engineers, setup plate guys, everybody in the industry is constantly being judged, and they all know it. And it's hard to because of that, it's hard sometimes to stop and enjoy it, right? Because it is, as gratifying as it is difficult. It's very difficult.
And I do think off of that kids, living in a motorhome, when you do get home from the track home and you had a bad day, it's hard to balance, not losing your mind at your kids or your wife and being upset at your day. Like, you don't really get that time to have your space because you're living in a 45-foot motorhome with your family, and you have a 5-year-old kid or whatever screaming and crying, and it's like, I have to be dad now. So I think learning to balance that is something that people in the garage do a really good job at. I know my parents always did.
This is what I love about this show. Frank was good. Jeff, not so much.
He had his moments.
It was great to have you both. Alexis, thanks for being a part of it today. And Jeff Burton, an absolute pleasure to welcome you back to the program and welcome you back to RFK. Thanks so much for coming by.
It's always fun. Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolute pleasure. We are done for the week, and we appreciate everybody listening. I'm Chris Childers, and thank you for being a part of this week's edition of Backstretch Banter with RFK Racing.